Hello, this is Matt, and I'm here with Kimberly.
Hi, Matt.
And today we're talking about resource capacity planning. So, first of all, what is resource capacity planning? First of all, in our type of business, a people business, really it's people planning. So, what we want to know is how do we plan and strategize around our people? Do we have enough people? Do we need more people? What are those people going to be doing? What do they want to be doing? And so forth. So, Kimberly, what talk more about resource capacity planning in a people business?
So I got to get this out of the way because anyone who knows me knows that using the term resource to talk about people is one of my hot button items. Um, I know that it's used a lot, but I always try to say people planning instead of resource planning. So I'm bucking the system that way. And it literally is just that. The idea being that because our inventory, when you're in a services related business, your inventory is people's time. You need to be able to account for those people's time, right? So when you're planning out for the year, you're looking at how many projects do I have coming in? How many people do I have available? Are they the right people for the right projects, right? If I have, 5 empty seats, but all of those seats are delivery and I have 5 engineers available, then I actually don't have the right plan. I don't have the right people for the right roles, right? So I need more roles for my people. I need more people to fill the roles. So looking at who you have, what types of roles you have to fill, what projects you have coming in, and then making sure that you have the right amount of projects for the people that you have, that you're projecting appropriately for growth. So whatever your growth targets are for the year, that you're hiring and you're doing your hiring ahead. So you know if I need to have people in 2 months, I don't need to wait, shouldn't wait 2 months to talk to my recruiter. I need to start talking to my recruiter now so that when 2 months when I have a project, I have people for that project. So again, looking at the capacity you have, which is the number of hours and the people, and then what projects you have, i.e., where you need to fill those hours and people.
And when you're doing this capacity planning, there's two different levels that you do it at. So there's the macro level that says next year we think we're going to grow 30%, and therefore we probably need 30% more people. Or at the macro level, we think we're going into these technologies, so we need to plan for people with those skill sets. And then there's at the more micro level. So now I'm down to real people with real skill sets and their passions and where they're wanting to go, and how do I know all of those details and plan my capacity accordingly so I help my people go where they want to go, also fulfilling the direction that the company needs and the needs of these individual projects. So it gets into a very individual um, basis, but you also have to plan for the macro capacity, right? I need to hire 30 people. Do I have enough recruiters to do that? Do I have plans for how I would onboard those people? Do I have plans for how I would, allocate those people to different projects? So it's something that's got to be done strategically at the macro level, but then you have to get down, and when you're creating your resource capacity plan, you have to get down to the individual humans and make sure that you're paying attention to what they want to do, what their best capabilities are, and where they should go. All right, so next let's talk about how resource capacity planning impacts project managers or delivery leads that are trying to deliver a project. There's a lot of things on a project manager's plate when they're trying to deliver a project. Ideally, they are given a team that has the strengths to deliver their project. So if you're doing good resource capacity planning, you end up with a team of people that are there ready to go. Can we talk about what happens as a project manager if you don't have your team show up when you need them?
Well, if you don't have the team or the right team show up when you need it at a project level, obviously that's going to impact your ability to deliver your project. if you're not delivering your project on time and at quality, that impacts the client's view of your business. Negatively impacting the client's view of your business gives you a bad reputation in the field, right? So it's a big deal that we're able to optimize the people that we put on projects, both from like the capacity aspect of making sure we have people who are available, right? If I have a project starting in 3 weeks, I need to make sure that the lead on the project isn't on another project, for the first 2 weeks of this project, right? So making sure that the timing aligns, as well as putting in the appropriate balance of skill sets. So from a cost perspective, you don't want to have an entire team of people that are all senior. One, your cost is going to be higher. You're also not giving an opportunity for your more junior folks to learn from your senior folks. So balancing the people who are on the team from a skill level, making sure you have the right people at the right time. The project manager shouldn't have to worry about that, right? They should, if we're doing that planning appropriately at a region or a company level, then the project manager should only need, or delivery lead should only need to say, this is kind of what I need and what we're trying to deliver. And they should be, provided with the right team of people that can show up when they need to show up and do the job that needs to be done.
Yep. My first project out of college, I was at a consulting company, and the first project I did, I guess, was an assessment, but then they chose to bring us in to do some work at a more detailed level. And the team ended up being 10 people who were within 3 months of graduating college, and 2 people that had experience, right? And they just hadn't planned initially to backfill some of their other projects to get people available so that they had the right mix of people. And imagine the project manager trying to deal with people who are just trying to figure out what the working world is about, as well as trying to deliver a project. Now, we successfully delivered the project, but so the first thing, this capacity planning can do is just reduce the stress on a project, right? There's no reason to put people into that situation if you have enough visibility and planning. So that resource mix doesn't mean that you're always going to have senior people or junior people, but having a mix of people that have different types of experiences and levels of experiences is one of the aspects that we're going to want to plan for when we're doing this capacity planning. What are some of the other aspects you think of beyond just like levels of seniority when you're building a team?
Personalities are one as well. If I'm building a team of, say, 7 people, I don't want to put 7 people on a team who are very quiet and not communicating and, tend to not be outgoing, right? Because you need somebody who's going to interact with the client. You also don't want 7 people who are all highly outspoken, because that's a whole different issue. And so knowing, that's why I'm very anti the word resource planning and pro people planning, because you really are people planning, right? It's not about, does person A fit in slot A? It's what does the team dynamic look like? How is the team going to interact with one another? Making sure if you have 2 people can't work together, don't put them on a team together. Save yourself, like you said, you want to set your teams up for success. And there's the hard skills of do we have enough people on the team that have the technical skills to deliver the project, and then the soft skills and the balance of personalities. Do we have enough leaders on the team that are going to uplift others and help bring them along from a leadership standpoint? Do we have too many leaders and we're going to have conflicts? So balancing personalities and skills so that you have the right mix of people on the team is absolutely essential. And it's why we always talk about doing people planning.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is it's really a balance when you're trying to run a business well, because we're talking kind of at the detailed level. We need to know personalities, skill sets, technologies, and so forth. And then we need to be looking at it from a cost and a financial perspective. So next month, how many people are coming available? How many new hires do I have? How many open positions do I have? Right? What can I do to avoid any bench time possible? Can I be accelerating some of my positions so they start earlier? Maybe I need to push off some positions because I don't have the people available yet. How can I do that so that I avoid bench costs when possible, and save that investment for when it's really needed. And that part of capacity planning is really a financial tool that, again, we're looking at that macro level to say who's coming available and then trying to match people with projects. And it's kind of this multi-dimensional problem of what the people want to do, what are their experiences, but having all of that data and having all of that information in front of you is critical. Talk about what you need from a system in order to do resource capacity planning at that level.
You need visibility. You need to be able to see all of the people that you have when they're available, what projects they're on, they're not on. Being able to see all of the projects, not only that you have currently in the queue, but being able to toggle between, we used to call it a what if view, but the idea of when you're looking at projections, I'm not just worried about what am I staffing this month, I'm worried about what am I staffing for the next 3, 6, 9 months, right? So as I'm looking out, I need to be able to say, okay, I have 5 projects in the sales pipeline. I think 2 or 3 of them are going to hit. What does that look like? And be able to then, you're at some point you're actually making a bet. It's an educated bet, it's an educated guess, but it's still a bit of a bet and saying, okay, I think these 3 out of 5 projects are going to hit. If that happens, I need to hire 5 people in the next 3 months, right? And then having that information. So if I don't have the visibility to know where projects are now, what's ending and extending, and then what I have in the pipeline that's new, as well as what I have in my people pipeline for hires, and then the more visibility I can have into like how to match people from skills and needs and wants, et cetera, the better. Having all of that in one place is absolutely crucial, because anytime I'm moving somebody from a project, I need to know how does that impact the project, right? Because person A and person B may be similar skill set, but they may have vastly different experience and background, and they may be different cost-wise, right? So I may swap person A for person B, and now I've tanked the margin on the project, and I didn't even realize it if I don't have visibility into it. So being able to see at the macro level, how do all of these pieces come together to impact your business, but also being able to see at the micro level, how do all of these things come together to impact the individual projects as well?
Yeah, so ultimately, when you're running a services business and resource capacity planning as an aspect of running that business, you have to worry about 3 different constituencies or levers, right? So you've got your people. So if you do capacity planning poorly, you could have turnover because people don't feel like they're getting the opportunities they want. People don't like being on the bench and not getting to build and do things. You have your clients. If you don't do it well, you may not be putting the best team for that client in order to get the work done. And then you have your company. And if you don't do well at capacity planning, your company won't make the money it needs, won't be able to invest in other things that it needs to invest in. So it's really a critical thing that sets up projects to succeed, and therefore project managers to succeed. Okay, so now let's talk about the business benefits of resource capacity planning. It might seem obvious that you obviously have to do some planning around what people are going to go on what projects, but in the end, it's going to have a dramatic effect on the bottom line of your company. So, Kimberly, talk about some of the metrics or the activities that we do, to manage the business in this area.
So if you think about the two factors that come into play in a service business, right? You have your sales pipeline on one side, so your sales and your projects, the projection of your projects, and then you have your people, so your hiring and retention on the other side. And then being able to look at both of them together in order to maximize how you're doing your people planning across the board, right? So when you think about, we talk about, looking at a forecast and saying, all right, I think that, here's what I think is going to happen in the next, 1, 2, 3, 6, 9 months. Here are the projects I think are going to happen based on my pipeline, my sales pipeline. And then here are the people that I have and or need based on the projects that I think are coming in, the ones I currently have, things I think are going to extend. and maybe skill sets that I need or places I want to expand into. I also need to take into account whatever kind of retention numbers I have as well. So there's always some bit of turnover that happens in any service organization. You also need to account for that in hiring. So if, for example, I know I need 5 people 4 months from now for 5 net new roles, I also need to account for what is my normal turnover rate to know if I need to add additional roles there to make up for that, to make sure that I'm not down people if somebody leaves. When I'm thinking about that notion of hiring and retention, I want to make sure it goes back to something we talked about earlier about optimizing for the people. I want to make sure that the way that I'm layering people into projects is such that it's keeping people happy. Because if people are happy, then my retention rate is going to be high. This is not only good for, from a people warm fuzzy standpoint, but from a business standpoint, because it costs money when you lose somebody. If I have someone and they leave and I have to hire somebody else to replace them, I lose the time that it takes to hire that person. That costs me money to hire somebody. It costs me money to onboard and train them. And there's going to be some overlap that needs to happen on a client side in order to make that transition from one person to another on the client. So it's costly from, not only from a people happiness standpoint, but it's costly from an actual financial bottom line standpoint whenever we have retention issues. So we want to look at, again, holistically, are we making sure that we're focusing on hiring retention as one of the metrics to go along with the sales and projections?
Yep. So if we don't retain people, we have to spend thousands of dollars hiring the next person, training them, and so forth. And in the end, you can have these great plans. Communication is a big piece of it. I remember us having someone that we held on the bench for this project that was coming, and we were making sure that we had the right mix of people and so forth. The big step we missed was telling the person that that's what we were doing, and they ended up leaving for another opportunity because they felt like they were wasting our money, where we were investing to say, look, take a couple months, like we've got this project coming, you're perfect for it. Not communicating that plan was obviously a big mistake, and we ended up losing that person. And it's interesting because we've talked about different skills. People will have desire to do. To learn new skills, or really to perfect some of their skills that they're passionate about. And in the end, the consultants, we find, want to do 3 things, and sometimes they want to have a mix, right? They want to be learning, they want to be teaching, and they want to be creating or doing. So they may be on a project where they have a lot of people less experienced than them, and they're spending a lot of time teaching. But then they'd like their next project to be one where maybe there's certain things that they're trying to learn that they get to do, and they're learning new things. And if all they're doing is teaching or learning, and they don't actually get to build and create things, they may miss that, right? So this is a very interesting part of the business, retention, because in the end it has easily calculated financial impacts. I am no longer able to bill for this person. I'm going to have to spend $30,000 to replace this person, or what have you. But a lot of the solutions to it are very people-centric things. Like, I have to be looking at the mix of things they want to do. I have to be communicating. And there's never a perfect answer, right? But at least if you're working on it, you're communicating to people. They say, I understand that I'm going to be more in a doing role right now. I'd like to get back to teaching, or vice versa. Like, as long as you're communicating, usually those things work out. But it definitely, like, one of the big business things is going to be retention and cost of turnover. Another Kimberly touched on is forecasting, right? If you're trying to project what your revenue is 3 months from now, you have to project how many people on those projects are current people and how many are new people. Otherwise, you may project, I'm going to hire 20 people and I'm going to have 20 people on the bench, and all of a sudden your projection looks horrible because you're not planning for that capacity, not knowing what people are doing. Kimberly, I see you smiling. I know that we've run into multiple times where we projected new projects without allocating the people, and all of a sudden our costs went through the roof.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the magic of making sure that you're rotating people from projects. Like you said, if I'm starting a new project with 20 people and I know that's happening in 3 months and I'm hiring 20 people, there's a lot of rotation that needs to happen to staff that project so that you have a mix of new people and existing people and not just seating 20 people.
Yep.
And not calling somebody on a Sunday and telling them on Monday they're going to a different project, which we also may have done on more than one occasion.
Yep.
But it is that people aspect of the planning that really goes into play there.
Right. And it's interesting. Like it's a hard conversation to have, that you need to rotate people and get a variety of people. I had a client, and his name's Mark, and he always loved the last person he had, right? So
Yes.
he had someone, they did a great job. He wants to do the next project. He's like, "Can I have so and so?" And we're like, "They're not available, but the next person is, and they're good." And like eventually we could joke and have the conversation that you always like the last person, but it's ultimately good for you that we're building this stable of people that all know these different skill sets. So in the end, working through this process, there's times where you're going to need to backfill people, and the more notice you have, the further you can see out, the better, right? Because then you can plan for it. And one of the hardest things for people, clients, or individual contributors is surprises, right? So the more you have a plan, the more you can communicate that. Of course, things are always changing. We're in a very dynamic business, but if you can plan for it, you can notify people. You also then have more control over your financials, right? You can do timing of your sales to your people and your hiring, so that you don't end up with big periods of high cost labor sitting on the bench. Now let's talk about the best practices and tooling around resource capacity planning. Let's start by at the kind of the base level. What type of reports or information do you need in order to do capacity planning?
Well, you need utilization. So I need to see, the utilization and bench. So I need to be able to see all of the people that we have in the company and where all of those people are allocated. And then I also need to see all of our projects and be able to see the forecasting for all of the projects, both the ones that we know exist and the ones that are in our sales pipeline. And then being able to see those things together in one place is absolutely excellent, because then I can look at my people and I can look at them against the projects, and then I can balance out how I put people against projects and see where our gaps are.
So we have our bench or utilization type information, and then we have our open position or forecasted positions type information. And then ultimately, you want to be able to then look at those employees that are forecasted to be on the bench and match them up with the open positions that we're forecasting to have, right? So we've kind of got,
Right. I also want to see all of my people as well, in case I want to move somebody around that's not on the bench and have somebody who's on the bench, swap people
so you
around.
don't just need to know who's available. You need to know who's staffed, like what project they're currently on, how long have they been there, those things, so that you can
Yep.
use that in looking at making these decisions, to what to do with them. So the next thing I'd say is like, so that's the basic information. But then as you're doing this, you need to know the implications of that, right? So if I staff this person on this project, how does that impact my financials? How does that, if I assume I'm going to win these two projects and this is how I staff them, then what is my outstanding open positions going to look like? What will my bench now look like? What will my financials now look like? So that I can see the impact of some of these decisions. And when there's a lot of projects and a lot of people, the impacts aren't obvious. and you need to be able to have a system and information that can keep up with the decisions you're making.
Absolutely. Especially if you have different, your business is broken up into different books of business, or like we had regions, if you make a change in one region and you're leveraging someone from another region, you can impact someone else's financials that they're responsible for and not realize it if you don't have a system that provides you with that visibility.
Right. So,
And
and the other piece of that, though, is if you have multiple regions, you need to be able to divide and conquer. So you need to be able to slice the data. You need to be able to look at your portion of the data and say, what am I doing with these people? But then you also need to be able to look at the whole, right? You may in the Midwest market be short 3 people and say, well, we need to hire and we think we're going to grow, so let's go hire 10 people. And you may have a major project in the West that's ending, and it may have 30 or 40 people coming available. Now, depending on your business and whether people travel, you may or may not decide to hire or not, but you want to be able to make those decisions in the different local markets, but then also see the overall impact. We had projects where we had people working in the West that were from the Midwest. So now you have a situation where you may be in the Midwest thinking, oh, I've got 3 people that I need to hire, and you've got 3 people that are traveling to another market that are coming available, right? So you need a tool that shows you that and says, well, maybe they're not even planning to be available, but they've been out there for a year. So what if we backfilled them? And since we have some people on the bench in that market, and we bring them back home to work locally on a new technology, right? So that ability to slice and see your slice of the world, but then also to see that in context of the overall organization is a key tool or capability when you're looking at doing this capacity planning.
absolutely. And that's one of the pieces that allows you to scale your organization. If you only have one view of the entire organization, it's very hard to scale because you don't have the ability to, delegate pieces, break the business into smaller pieces, right? And have those places where you have someone responsible for the West or the Midwest or whatever, however you want to segregate your business. That allows you to scale your business and grow your business by being able to have that, slice and those into pieces and still have that visibility overall as well.
Right. And if you can't break it into those pieces, then it's very hard at the micro level to do it, with a human touch, to do it knowing the people and so forth. Because no one's going to know 1,000 people, but there's people that are running a project that work with people every day that can. So you need a system that can support both that micro, hands-on touch need as well as predict the macro economics across your business.
Absolutely. And being able to take the data from the micro level and have the macro level visibility is huge. And we had an experience where we had that visibility and then lost it when we changed tools. And it was, I always said it was like flying an airplane and having someone take away your, all of your console, and all of a sudden you can't really see how everything fits together. You can only see the pieces, and that doesn't actually help you get where you need to go.
And I think the key thing there that we lost wasn't that we didn't have reports available with those different pieces of information. It's just that they weren't in sync. So you might have financial data that's 3 months old and staffing data that doesn't line up to your sales projections. So now you've got 3 systems with 3 sets of data, and you're not able to make this coordinated set of decisions. So that's ultimately having your data, that's future focused and interoperable is critical. And then I guess the last kind of recommendation I would have is that you need to do this in a cadence. It can't be, if you only talk about this when there's a project or when there's a need, or everything's ad hoc, then it's going to be very difficult to get good at it. What you need is to know these are the things we do every day, every week, every month, and constantly be looking at where are people, what are they doing, what are they wanting to do, who's coming available, what projects are coming, and making sure that you're constantly looking at that and getting good at matching people to projects and planning your capacity. All right. Well, this is what we had prepared around resource capacity planning and people planning. And um, if you have any questions or comments, um, add, you know, reach out and we can do some more content. And ultimately, just really focus on those three things: your people, your clients, and then the impact on your business, and you'll be doing the right thing.
And don't call your people resources.